Hyunwoo Kim straightened his tie one last time before stepping into the massive chamber. The Galactic Senate building stretched up so high he could not see the ceiling. Thousands of different alien species sat in rows that curved around like a giant bowl. Some looked like giant insects. Others glowed like living crystals. A few were just floating clouds of gas in special containers. Ji-eun Park walked beside him, carrying a datapad with their notes. She had spent weeks studying the proper ways to speak in the Senate. Every species had their own rules. The bug-like Vextar only spoke in numbers and facts. The crystal people called Zephyrians made musical sounds instead of words. The gas creatures needed 3 whole days to think before saying anything. "Remember," Ji-eun whispered, "bow twice to the Senate President. Wait for permission to speak. Never disagree directly with anyone." Hyunwoo nodded, but he felt uncomfortable with all these rules. On Earth, people said what they thought. Here, everything seemed fake and overly polite. The Senate President was a huge creature that looked like a walking tree made of stone. Elder Gorthak had lived for over 1,000 years. His voice rumbled like distant thunder when he called the session to order. "Today we discussed the trade agreement with the human colony of New Seoul," Elder Gorthak announced. A tall, thin Vextar delegate stood up. Its forearms moved in complex patterns as it spoke. "The probability of successful trade relations with humans remains at 23.7%. Their unpredictable nature creates economic risk factors that cannot be properly calculated." The other delegates made sounds of agreement. The Zephyrians hummed in harmony. The Nethrons' gas swirled in their containers in what Hyunwoo guessed was their version of nodding. Ji-eun poked Hyunwoo's arm. It was time for him to respond. He stood up and looked around the chamber. All those alien eyes were watching him. "Thank you, honored delegates," Hyunwoo began. He was supposed to bow now, but something inside him rebelled against it. "I have to disagree with my Vextar friend here." The chamber went completely silent. Ji-eun's face turned white with shock. The Vextar delegate's mandibles clicked rapidly, which Hyunwoo knew was a sign of anger, but Hyunwoo continued. "You say we're unpredictable. Maybe that's true, but unpredictable doesn't mean bad for business. Some of the best deals happen when people think outside the box." He walked forward, ignoring Ji-eun's desperate gestures to sit down. "Look, our colony has resources you need. Rare minerals, new technologies, creative solutions to old problems. Yes, we might do things differently than you expect. But isn't that exactly what makes us valuable trading partners?" The Vextar delegate made a harsh buzzing sound. "Human Kim speaks without mathematical proof. This behavior violates Protocol 15.7 of Senate Communication Standards." Protocols, Hyunwoo said with a small smile. "You know what we humans say about too many rules? They're like shoes that are too tight. They might look nice, but they make it hard to walk." Several delegates gasped. Others made clicking, humming, or swirling motions that seemed upset. But Hyunwoo noticed something interesting. Some of the younger aliens leaned forward, as if they were actually listening to his words instead of just following their programming. Elder Gorthak's ancient eyes studied Hyunwoo carefully. The old creature said nothing, but Hyunwoo felt like he was being measured somehow. "Furthermore," Hyunwoo continued, "this 23.7% success rate your computer brain calculated, where did that number come from? Did you factor in human adaptability? Our willingness to work hard when things get tough? Our talent for finding new solutions when old ones don't work?" The Vextar delegate's forearms waved frantically. "Calculations are based on standard behavioral models used for all species. Human Kim's question showed dangerous thinking patterns." "Dangerous?" Hyunwoo laughed. "Asking questions is dangerous now? Friends, if asking why and how is dangerous, then maybe the real danger is not asking enough questions." The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates from different species made their angry sounds all at once. Some stood up and pointed at Hyunwoo. Others seemed to shrink back in their seats as if he were some kind of monster. But the strangest thing was the fear in their eyes. Not anger or disgust like Hyunwoo expected. They looked genuinely terrified of him, like he was a bomb that might explode at any moment. Ji-eun rushed to his side. "Ambassador Kim, please sit down. You're making this worse. Worse? Hyunwoo looked around at all the frightened faces. I'm just talking. I thought that's what we came here to do. Elder Gorthak's voice boomed across the chamber, instantly silencing everyone. This session is adjourned. Human Kim will be escorted to diplomatic quarters pending review of his statements. 4 armed guards approached Hyunwoo. They were from different species, but they all had the same look of nervous fear. The lead guard, a reptilian creature with green scales, spoke in careful, measured words. Ambassador Kim, please come with us. You will be provided with comfortable accommodations while the Senate reviews today's proceedings. As they led him away, Hyunwoo caught sight of Ji-eun. She was frantically tapping on her data pad, probably trying to figure out how to fix this mess. But what mess? All he had done was speak his mind and ask a few questions. The guards walked him through long corridors filled with alien art and symbols. None of them spoke to him, but he could hear them whispering to each other in their own languages. The AU. Words were strange, but the tone was unmistakable. They were scared. His quarters turned out to be more like a luxury hotel room than a prison cell. There was a bed, a desk, and even a window showing the stars outside the space station. But when he tried the door, it would not open. Hyunwoo sat on the bed and tried to understand what had gone wrong. He had prepared for this meeting for months. He knew the facts about their trade proposal. He understood the political situation. But somehow, just by speaking naturally, he had created what Ji-eun called a diplomatic incident. The strangest part was how everyone had reacted. It was not like they disagreed with his ideas. It was like they were physically unable to process what he was saying, as if hearing honest, direct speech was something their brains could not handle. Outside his window, the space station continued its slow rotation around the distant star. Somewhere out there was Earth, where people said what they meant and meant what they said. Here, millions of light years away, that simple human trait seemed to make him the most dangerous person in the galaxy. Dr. Min-ho Lee was deep underground in the global archive when Ji-eun's emergency message reached him. The message was simple but urgent. Need any historical data about galactic communication protocols? Ambassador Kim in serious trouble. Please. Help. Min-ho sat back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. He had been working in the archives for 15 years, and he thought he knew every database in the system. But galactic communication protocols? That seemed like something the diplomatic corps would handle, not an archaeologist like him. Still, Ji-eun sounded desperate. Min-ho had known her since university, and she never panicked without good reason. He started searching through the historical records, looking for anything about first contact or early galactic relations. The first few hours turned up only basic information. Humans had joined the Galactic Union 50 years ago. Before that, Earth had been isolated and alone. The textbooks all said the same thing. Humans were newcomers to galactic civilization, learning from species that had been traveling among the stars for thousands of years. But something bothered Min-ho about those textbooks. They were too neat, too simple. In his experience, history was never that clean and organized. Real history had gaps, contradictions, and mysteries. These official records had none of that. He decided to dig deeper into the restricted sections of the archive. His security clearance allowed him access to classified materials, though he rarely needed them for his usual work, studying ancient Earth civilizations. What he found in the classified section made him stop breathing for a moment. The files were labeled First Contact, Original Records, Security Level 9. The dates on them were not 50 years old. They were over 200 years old. With shaking hands, Min-ho opened the first file. It contained video logs from someone called Admiral So-young, Choi. The woman on the screen wore a uniform Min-ho did not recognize, standing in what looked like a spaceship's command center. Personal log, Admiral Choi. Day 847 of the Galactic Integration Project, she began. The human delegation continues to serve as mediators in the ongoing dispute between the Vextar Collective and the Zephyrian Empire. Our unique ability to cut through the diplomatic doublespeak has proved invaluable once again. Min-ho paused the recording. Mediators? Unique ability? This did not match anything in the official histories. According to every textbook he had ever read, humans were the newest and least experienced species in galactic politics. He continued watching. Admiral Choi appeared in dozens of logs, each one revealing more impossible information. Humans were not newcomers to the galaxy. They were founding members of the Galactic Union. More than that, they seemed to hold a special position as negotiators and peacekeepers. The other species continued to rely on our judgment, Admiral Choi said in one log. They tell me it's because we can see through lies and manipulation in ways they cannot. I'm not sure I understand the science behind it, but the results speak for themselves. When humans are present at negotiations, agreements get made. Without us, the talks go in circles for years. The logs painted a picture of a thriving galactic civilization with humans at its center. Earth was not a backward planet that had recently discovered space travel. It was a major power with colonies throughout the galaxy and a fleet of advanced starships. But then suddenly, the logs stopped. The last entry was dated exactly 200 years ago, during something called the Great Silence Event. Admiral Choi looked tired and worried in that final recording. The psychic attacks are getting stronger. Our people on the outer colonies report memory loss and confusion. Some entire settlements have gone dark. The Vextar deny involvement, but our intelligence suggests they're working with other species to implement some kind of large-scale mental suppression protocol. She paused and looked directly into the camera. If anyone finds these logs after, we're gone. Know this. Humans were never meant to be followers in this galaxy. We were meant to be the voice that speaks truth when everyone else falls silent. If we've been silenced, then something terrible has happened to everyone. The recording ended there. Minho searched frantically through the remaining files, but there was nothing else. Everything after the Great Silence Event was either missing or classified at levels beyond his clearance. His hands shook as he composed a message to Ji-eun. How could he explain this? How could he tell her that everything they knew about human history was apparently a lie? Before he could send the message, his computer chimed with an incoming priority communication. The face that appeared on his screen was unfamiliar, a middle-aged man in a military uniform. Dr. Lee, I'm Captain Taehyung Seo with the Earth Defense Force. I understand you've been researching some old files. Minho's blood went cold. Had he triggered some kind of security alert by accessing the classified records? Captain, I can explain. No need to explain, Captain Seo interrupted. We've been monitoring archive access for researchers who might stumble onto the truth. Congratulations, Dr. Lee. You've just discovered the biggest cover-up in human history. Cover-up, Captain? Seo nodded grimly. Everything you just read about Admiral Choi in the early days is true. Humans weren't newcomers to galactic civilization. We helped build it. And then something happened that made everyone forget. Minho felt dizzy. The Great Silence Event? A psychic weapon of unprecedented scale. It didn't just attack human minds. It rewrote human history. Every record, every memory, every trace of our real past was either destroyed or altered. The attack was so powerful it knocked our entire civilization back to the Stone Age. But why? Why would anyone do that to us? Captain Seo's expression grew dark. Because we were the only species that could expose their lies. In a galaxy full of creatures that could manipulate minds and control thoughts, humans were immune. We were the truth-tellers, and that made us too dangerous to leave alone. The captain leaned forward. Dr. Lee, I need you to pack everything you've found. We're going to Station Prima to get your friend's ambassador out of trouble, but more importantly, we're going to remind the galaxy why they were so afraid of letting humans speak freely in the first place. Minho looked at the screen full of classified files, his head spinning with the implications. Everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy was wrong. They were not the new kids learning from their elders. They were the forgotten guardians of truth itself. And somehow, Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim had just reminded everyone why that was so terrifying. Captain Taehyung Seo's ship cut through space toward Station Prima, with Dr. Minho Lee aboard. The journey would take 3 days, giving Minho time to study the classified files and CO time to explain what the Earth Defense Force knew about humanity's hidden past. "We've suspected something was wrong for years," Seo told Minho as they sat in the ship's small meeting room. "Too many gaps in the historical record, too many technologies that appeared out of nowhere, and too many times when our diplomats accidentally said or did things that terrified alien species." Minho spread Admiral Choi's files across the table. "These logs suggest humans had some kind of natural immunity to mental manipulation. Is that even possible?" "More than possible," CO replied. "Our scientists have been quietly studying it for decades. Every other known species in the galaxy has some level of psychic ability or sensitivity. They can influence each other's thoughts, share emotions, even plant ideas directly into minds. But humans? Our brains just don't work that way. So we're like psychic blind spots?" SEO nodded. "Exactly. And in a galaxy where mental manipulation is as common as talking, that makes us incredibly dangerous. We see lies for what they are. We ask uncomfortable questions. We refuse to accept things just because someone with psychic powers tells us to." Meanwhile, on Station Prima, Ji-un Park was learning this truth the hard way. After 3 days of research into galactic communication protocols, she had started to notice strange patterns. Every rule, every tradition, every aspect of Senate procedure seemed designed to prevent independent thinking. The Vextar spoke only in mathematical certainties, but Ji-un realized their numbers were often meaningless. They threw around statistics and probabilities to make their arguments sound scientific, but the data behind them was either made up or deliberately misleading. The Zephyrians communicated through harmonic frequencies that were supposed to create unity and understanding. But when Ji-un listened carefully, she noticed the harmonics had a hypnotic quality. They made listeners feel calm and agreeable, less likely to question or argue. Even the Nethrins' 3-day thinking periods seemed suspicious. Ji-un discovered they spent those 3 days in psychic communion with their hive mind, ensuring every statement matched the collective will perfectly. When she tried to research deeper into these patterns, her computer access was mysteriously blocked. Her quarters were suddenly assigned new security monitors, and she began receiving visits from helpful alien officials who suggested she might be working too hard and should take a break. But the harder they tried to discourage her research, the more determined Ji-un became. She started meeting with other humans on the station, maintenance workers, tourists, minor diplomatic staff. She asked them simple questions. Did they ever feel confused during Senate sessions? Did alien arguments sometimes seem to make sense at first, then feel wrong when they thought about them later? The answers were always yes. Every human on the station reported the same experience. Alien logic felt artificial, like listening to someone read from a script instead of speaking their own thoughts. In his detention quarters, Hyunwoo was having experiences that were even stranger. The comfortable room that had seemed like a hotel was starting to feel more like a prison. Not because of the locked door or the guards outside, but because of the dreams. Every night, Hyunwoo found himself reliving memories that were not his own. He saw Senate sessions from long ago, where humans sat in places of honor instead of being treated like dangerous outsiders. He watched human negotiators cut through complex alien arguments with simple questions that exposed hidden lies and secret agendas. In one dream, he was Admiral So Young Choi herself, standing before the full Senate as she announced the discovery of a conspiracy among 3 major species. They had been using psychic influence to manipulate trade agreements, stealing resources from smaller civilizations while making their victims grateful for the privilege. "The evidence is clear," Dream Choi declared. "While you debated and discussed and followed your precious protocols, they were robbing you blind, and you thanked them for it because they told your minds to thank them." The alien delegates in that ancient Senate session had looked shocked and embarrassed, like children caught stealing cookies. But they had also looked grateful that someone had finally spoken the truth they were unable to say themselves. When Hyunwoo woke from these dreams, he understood something important. The fear he saw in his guard's eyes was not fear of him personally. It was fear of what he represented, a mind that could not be controlled, a voice that could not be silenced. A human being who would speak the truth no matter how uncomfortable it made everyone else. On the third day of his confinement, Elder Gorthak came to visit him personally. The ancient Thumorian barely fit through the doorway, his stone-like body creaking as he moved. "Human Kim," the elder rumbled, "do you know why you are here?" Hyunwoo looked up at the massive creature. "Because I asked questions that made people uncomfortable?" "Because you asked questions that people were unable to ask themselves," Elder Gorthak corrected. "For 2 centuries, this galaxy has operated under rules that prevent independent thought. Every species follows patterns that were established not by choice, but by psychic conditioning. Except humans." The elder's ancient eyes studied Hyunwoo carefully. "Except humans. Your species is immune to the mental controls that keep the rest of us in line. That immunity once made you our guardians and truth speakers. Then it made you our enemies." Hyunwoo stood up slowly. "You're talking about the Great Silence event, aren't you? The thing that wiped out human memory and sent us back to the Stone Age." Elder Gorthak's surprise was obvious. "You remember?" "I'm starting to. Dreams mostly, but they feel real. Like recovered memories." Hyunwoo walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "We weren't newcomers to galactic civilization. We helped create it." "You were more than creators," Elder Gorthak said quietly. "You were the conscience we could never develop ourselves, the voice that spoke when our own voices were silenced by fear or manipulation, or simple psychic control." The elder moved closer to the window. "Some of us have been waiting 200 years for humans to naturally redevelop space travel and return to the galaxy, waiting for someone like you to stand up in the Senate and remind us what free speech actually sounds like." Hyunwoo turned to face him. "Then why keep me locked up? Why not let me speak?" Elder Gorthak's expression was sad. "Because the species that orchestrated the Great Silence are still in power, and they are terrified that humans will remember who they really are." Captain Seo's ship docked at Station Prima just as the night cycle began. Dr. Minho Lee followed him through the crowded corridors, carrying a secured data case containing all of Admiral Choi's files and other classified materials they had gathered. They were supposed to meet Ji-eun at the human diplomatic offices, but when they arrived, the office was empty except for a nervous-looking clerk who told them Ji-eun had been reassigned to other duties. "Where is she?" Seo demanded. The clerk, a young man named Do-hyun, looked around nervously before answering. "She's been asking too many questions about Senate procedures. They moved her to a research facility in Section 7. Officially, it's a promotion. Unofficially." He shrugged helplessly. Seo and Minho exchanged glances. Section 7 was the high-security area of the station where most humans were not allowed to go. "What about Ambassador Kim?" Minho asked, still in diplomatic detention. "But there are rumors that some of the more radical Senate members want him transferred to a psychiatric facility. They claim his behavior shows signs of mental instability." That night, Seo used his military clearance to access the restricted sections of the station's computer network. What he found confirmed their worst fears. The research facility where Ji-eun had been taken was actually a place where they studied aberrant psychological patterns in humans. But he also discovered something unexpected. A message waiting for him in a hidden folder that should not have existed. The message was from Elder Gorthak. "Captain Seo, meet me in archive chamber. 12 at midnight. Bring Dr. Lee and any historical materials you have found. It is time for the full truth." Archive Chamber 12 was deep in the oldest part of Station Prima, in sections that most current inhabitants never visited. The room was vast and filled with crystalline storage devices that hummed with contained data. Elder Gorthak waited for them there, his massive form dwarfing the human-sized furniture. "I have been the keeper of secrets for 800 years, he began without ceremony. "Tonight those secrets end." He gestured to the storage crystals around them. "This chamber contains the true history of the galaxy, records that were hidden when the Great Silence was implemented." Minho opened his data case. "We found Admiral Choi's logs. They show humans as founding members of the Galactic Union, not newcomers." "More than founding members," Elder Gorthak corrected. "Humans were The immune system of galactic civilization. Every other species you see in the Senate today has some level of psychic ability. We can share thoughts, influence emotions, plant suggestions in each other's minds. For most of galactic history, this was simply how communication worked. This year, Elder moved to one of the storage crystals and activated it. Holographic images filled the air around them, scenes from the ancient galaxy showing different species in what looked like perfect harmony. But psychic communication has a dark side, he continued. Those with stronger abilities can dominate those with weaker ones. Entire civilizations can be controlled by a few powerful psychic leaders. Truth becomes whatever the strongest mind declares it to be. Captain Seo watched the holograms with growing understanding. Until humans arrived. Until humans arrived, Elder Gorthak confirmed. Your species was completely immune to psychic manipulation. When a human heard a lie, they recognized it as a lie no matter how many psychic voices insisted it was truth. When someone tried to plant false memories in human minds, those minds simply rejected the intrusion. The holograms changed to show ancient Senate sessions where humans sat in special seats marked with symbols Minho recognized from Admiral Choi's uniform. Humans became our truth speakers, Elder Gorthak explained. Every major decision required human oversight. Not because you were smarter or more moral than other species, but because you were the only ones who could detect when someone was lying or when a psychic influence was being used to manipulate the discussion. Minho studied the images carefully. It looks like a golden age. Every species working together, making decisions based on actual facts instead of hidden agendas. It was a golden age, Elder Gorthak agreed sadly. Innovation flourished. Exploration expanded. New civilizations were welcomed and protected instead of conquered or controlled. For over 1,000 years, human immunity to psychic manipulation kept the galaxy honest. The holograms changed again, showing darker scenes, ships being destroyed, planets going silent, panic in the ancient Senate chambers. But some species resented human oversight. Elder Gorthak continued. The Vextar Collective had built their entire civilization on psychic control of their worker castes. The Nethran Empire used mental manipulation to keep conquered worlds peaceful and compliant. To them, human truth-speaking was not protection. It was an existential threat. Captain Seo leaned forward. So they decided to eliminate the threat. They spent decades developing the Great Silence, a psychic weapon of unprecedented scale. Not just an attack on individual minds, but on collective memory itself. They used it to erase not only human knowledge of the galaxy, but galactic knowledge of humanity's true role. The final holograms were painful to watch. Human colonies throughout the galaxy, simply stopping mid-conversation and forgetting who they were. Earth's advanced civilization collapsing as people forgot how to maintain their technology. The galaxy's other species accepting new memories that painted humans as primitive newcomers instead of essential partners. The weapon was so powerful that it nearly destroyed human civilization entirely, Elder Gorthak said quietly. Your people were forced to start over from almost nothing. It took you 200 years to redevelop space travel and rejoin galactic society. Minho felt sick. But some of you remember the truth. A few species have members with strong enough mental defenses to resist memory alteration. Thumorians like myself, some of the Elder Zephyrians, a handful of others. We formed a secret network preserving the real history and waiting. Waiting for what? SEO asked. Waiting for humans to return to the galaxy and start asking uncomfortable questions again. Waiting for someone like Ambassador Kim to stand up in the Senate and remind everyone what free speech actually sounds like. Elder Gorthak moved to another storage crystal and activated it. The new holograms showed recent footage from the Senate session where Hyunwoo had caused such chaos. Watch the reactions carefully, the Elder instructed. See how the younger aliens lean forward when he speaks? How some of them look confused as if they are remembering something they had forgotten. Minho and Seo watched the footage. Elder Gorthak was right. Mixed in with the fear and outrage, there were expressions of dawning recognition. The psychic conditioning is breaking down, Elder Gorthak explained. 200 years is a long time to maintain false memories across an entire galaxy. When humans speak with true freedom, it awakens something in other species. The memory of what honest communication feels like. Captain Seo stood up. Then we need to get Ambassador Kim back to that Senate chamber, and we need to find Ji-un before they do something permanent to silence her. Elder Gorthak's stone-like face managed what might have been a smile. Captain, I think it is time to activate the resistance network we have been building for the past 2 centuries. But first we need to wake up every human on this station and remind them who they really are. The rescue of Ji-un Park from the research facility happened at dawn, when most of the station was in sleep cycle. Captain Seo's team moved through the corridors like shadows, guided by Elder Gorthak's knowledge of the station's hidden passages. They found Ji-un in a room filled with monitoring equipment, electrodes attached to her head as alien scientists studied her brain patterns, but she was conscious and alert, having somehow resisted whatever they were trying to do to her. About time you got here, she said as Seo cut her restraints. I've learned some very interesting things about psychic suppression techniques. Are you hurt? Dr. Minho Lee asked, checking the electrode marks on her temples. Just angry, Ji-un replied. They've been trying to implant false memories for 3 days, but whatever makes humans immune to psychic manipulation also makes us immune to this kind of direct mental interference. As they escaped through Elder Gorthak's secret routes, Ji-un shared what she had learned during her captivity. The research facility was part of a larger project to develop new methods of controlling human minds. The Vextar Collective and their allies were terrified that more humans might start remembering the truth about galactic history. They're planning to implement a new Great Silence, she explained. Something more targeted this time, designed specifically to affect human psychology. They want to make us docile and compliant like the other species. Captain Seo's jaw tightened. Not if we stop them first. Their next objective was freeing Hyun-woo from diplomatic detention. This proved easier than expected, because Elder Gorthak simply walked through the front entrance and announced that he was conducting an official Senate review of the prisoner. The guards, conditioned by centuries of obedience to authority figures, let him pass without question. The beauty of psychic conditioning, Elder Gorthak explained to the others later, is that it works both ways. The same mental patterns that make them follow orders also make them unable to question those orders when delivered with sufficient confidence. With the team reunited, they gathered in Elder Gorthak's private chambers to plan their next move. The ancient Thumorian activated communication devices that connected him to the secret resistance network spanning the galaxy. The time has come, he broadcast. All cells, implement Liberation Protocol. Across the galaxy, members of the resistance began working. On human colonies, teachers started sharing the real history that had been hidden for 2 centuries. Alien worlds, sympathetic individuals began questioning the official stories they had been told about human nature and galactic history. But the most important work was happening right on Station Prima. Ji-un had spent her days in captivity developing a plan to awaken the psychic immunity in other humans. She called it the cascade effect. Every human on this station has the natural ability to see through lies and resist mental manipulation, she explained. But most of them don't know it because they've been taught to doubt their own perceptions. If we can show them how to trust their instincts, the awakening will spread naturally from person to person. They started with the human staff in the diplomatic section. Do-hyun, the nervous clerk, was their first success. When Ji-un showed him recordings of Senate sessions and asked him to describe what he really saw instead of what he thought he should see, his eyes widened with recognition. The Vextar delegate is lying, he said with amazement. All those statistics he quotes, they're just made-up numbers meant to sound impressive. And the Zephyrian music, it's hypnotic. It makes you want to agree even when you know the argument. Doesn't make sense. Do-hyun shared this revelation with other human workers who shared it with their friends and families. Within hours, every human on the station was beginning to see through the illusions that had kept the galaxy in mental chains for 2 centuries. The Vextar Collective panicked when they realized what was happening. They activated emergency protocols, flooding the station with psychic suppression waves meant to force everyone back into compliance. But the humans remained unaffected, and their presence seemed to create zones of clarity where other species could also think freely. Elder Gorthak called for an emergency Senate session, claiming he had urgent matters of galactic security to address. The other delegates had no choice but to attend. The psychic conditioning that made them susceptible to control also made them unable to refuse direct commands from senior authority figures. When they gathered in the great chamber, Hyunwoo took his place at the speaker's podium. But this time he was not alone. Ji-yoon, Dr. Min-ho Lee, Captain Seo, and dozens of other awakened humans filled the observer sections. Their presence created what Elder Gorthak called a truth field, a zone where psychic manipulation simply could not function. Honored delegates, Hyunwoo began. I want to tell you a story about a species that was erased from history because they asked too many uncomfortable questions. He spoke for 2 hours, laying out the evidence that Dr. Min-ho had discovered. Admiral Choi's logs played on the chamber's viewing screens. Ancient records proved that humans had been founding members of the Galactic Union, not recent arrivals. He spoke. Something extraordinary happened. The alien delegates began remembering suppressed memories. Young Zephyrians recalled their grandparents speaking of the time before silence, when different thoughts were allowed. Nathran individuals started breaking free from their collective consciousness and expressing personal opinions for the first time in their lives. The Vextar Collective made one last desperate attempt to maintain control, broadcasting a massive, psychic attack meant to silence everyone in the chamber. But with so many humans present, the attack had no effect except to make their intentions obvious to everyone. This is what they did to us 200 years ago, Hyunwoo announced as the psychic waves crashed harmlessly around the chamber. They used mental force to rewrite history and steal our voices. But they forgot something important about humans. We don't stay silent for long. The session ended with a unanimous vote to establish new galactic laws. The Free Speech Accords guaranteed that no species could be subjected to psychic manipulation or memory alteration. More importantly, they mandated human participation in all major galactic decisions, not as rulers, but as guardians against the kind of mental tyranny that had stagnated civilization for 2 centuries. Elder Gorthak made one final announcement before retiring from his position as Senate President. Let the record show that on this day, the galaxy remembers who we really are. Let it also show that humans have reclaimed their role as keepers of authentic voice, the species entrusted with ensuring that truth can always find a way to speak. In the months that followed, the changes spread throughout galactic civilization. Species that had been controlled by psychic overlords for millennia broke free and established their own governments. New technologies emerged as minds were freed to think creatively again. Exploration resumed as civilizations rediscovered their curiosity about the universe. Hyunwoo returned to his colony of New Seoul, but not as a simple trade representative. He carried the title of Truth Speaker, part of a new network of humans scattered throughout the galaxy, whose job was to ensure that freedom of thought and speech were never again suppressed. Ji-yoon established an academy on Station Prima where humans and aliens learned together about the importance of independent thinking and honest communication. Dr. Min-ho became the galaxy's official historian, working to recover and preserve the real history that had been hidden for so long. And Captain Seo took command of a new fleet, whose mission was to seek out civilizations that might still be trapped under psychic control and offer them the freedom to speak their own thoughts. The galaxy was no longer a place where truth was whatever the strongest mind declared it to be. It was a place where any voice could speak honestly, and where humans stood ready to defend that right for everyone.